Welcome back to Spellbound. I'm BJ the Book Witch, and you're watching an episode of Book Both Ways. This is where we take a look at books from the perspectives of both a reader and writer. And today, we're talking about strong female protagonists. So here's the thing. My Content Team Book Club is currently reading the Graceling series by Kristin Cashore. And last month when we were talking about the first book in the series, Graceling, one of my friends brought up a really good point that eventually became the basis for this episode. She discussed the way that the female protagonist of the book, Katsa, was depicted as super strong. So Katsa has a grace or a special power for fighting and killing, and with that came several traits of masculinity, survival, and aggression. And any attempts the author made to offer her feminine attributes came across as clunky and awkward. We discussed how this might be due to the fact that the book was written in 2008, right when YA fantasy was really starting to figure itself out, and the way a lot of early fantasy female protagonists had to really lay on the masculinity to help drive their story. It was a great discussion and really caused me to pause and examine some other female protagonists from other major YA books and series. So I grabbed a random collection of books and female protagonists and thought that we could consider them together. Naturally, I wanted to start this list with some low-hanging fruit and address the female protagonists that I know that you're all expecting me to. Ella from Ella Enchanted. So Ella Enchanted came out in 1997 and was my favorite book throughout all of elementary school. It was actually given to me by my cousin Megan, who had just previously bought it the day before at the Scholastic Book Fair. And that is some serious love when you give away a book that you purchased with your own lunch money from the Scholastic Book Fair. And for that act of kindness, I will always be grateful because it introduced me to one of my favorite books of all time. So thank you, Megan. And yes, Ella Enchanted is middle grade, but hear me out. Ella Enchanted by Gail, Carson, Levine is a middle grade Cinderella retelling in which Ella is cursed by a fairy to always be obedient. But let's take a look at Ella as a character. Ella is strong-willed, despite the obedience curse, which is a point in her favor. She does spend much of the book in subservient roles, but that has more to do with it being a plot device than a character trait, so we'll allow it. She is allowed to be feminine, insofar as middle grade really leans into the idea of womanhood, and this one didn't really, which was fine. It does talk about her growing from childhood into young adulthood and finally being able to wear some of her mother's gowns. But where Ella loses some points is the climax of the book, and look out because here come some spoilers. The prince, who she's fallen in love with, has asked her to marry him. Knowing her curse and knowing she could be ordered at any time to murder him is finally what gives Ella the internal strength to refuse. She refuses the proposal, which was phrased like a command, marry me, Ella, thereby breaking the curse. This book literally says, "It was my love for him. My love for my father wasn't enough. Even I wasn't enough. But Char was enough." That in the end it was a self-sacrificial love for a guy that set her free, that's not awesome. But this book was also written 20 years ago, and I guarantee that that climax wouldn't have been written today. I still love the book, and I still highly recommend it. Great retelling. Horrible movie, which I also love. So we already mentioned Katsa from Kristin Cashore's Graceling, but we could also mention Fire from the Graceling sequel, Fire, from 2009. In this book, Fire is considered a monster because of her ability to invade and influence the mind of humans, and she does this with her thoughts as well as with her beauty. So we do have depictions of femininity, at least in terms of feminine beauty, but it's literally weaponized against other humans. And this book also mentions her periods, because her periods and her blood draw the attention from other monsters. So not only is her physical feminine beauty a weapon, her periods are literally a weakness. Now that doesn't mean that all YA female protagonists have problems, and that doesn't mean that these are necessarily bad female protagonists. These are just some things to consider when writing and reading female main characters. Do they drive their own story? Are they allowed to express themselves sexually? Do they have female friendships based on trust? And do they deny themselves or commit some sort of self-sacrifice, specifically out of love for a male love interest, at a pivotal plot point or at the climax? In the next book, we have all the right answers to these questions in Alosa from Daughter of the Pirate King, written in 2017. Daughter of the Pirate King by Tricia Levenseller is about Alosa, a pirate captain who infiltrates an enemy ship to uncover hidden maps and plans from a deceased pirate lord. Alosa might be my favorite character of all time in what might be my favorite book of all time. I just feel like we have so much in common. You know, she's daughter of the Pirate King, and my dad was in the Navy, and she swings on ropes between pirate ships on the open sea, and I toured a carrier once at Fort Sumter, so like, I get it. I really do love this book though. My only regret is that it wasn't written sooner, when I was first reading a lot of YA, because I really would have loved to have it as an option, you know, to counter all the Twilight. So Alosa is, as you might have guessed, the daughter of a pirate king. And as such, she is captain of her own ship, she has an entirely female crew, and she is, by all counts, an actual badass. She's been trained by the most notorious and ruthless pirate there is, so she is the best, bar none, when it comes to sword fighting. And when it comes to femininity, she's absolutely bomb. She wears both dresses and breeches throughout the entire book, mostly dresses, and she fights in them just fine. She paints her face, she wears makeup, she does her hair, she loves baths, and she loves to present as feminine because that's where she feels most comfortable. She has an entire crew of other women, and her best friend and first mate is a woman. There is a love interest, but that doesn't become the sole focus of the plot, nor does her interest in the guy become the catalyst for the climax. In short, I love this book. I love Alosa, and now all I want to do is go and read this book. Another popular female protagonist is Audrey from the Stalking Jack the Ripper series by Kerri Maniscalco. The first book in the series came out in 2016, so a year before Daughter of the Pirate King. Stalking Jack the Ripper and the subsequent 3 books are detective crime novels that follow Audrey, a forensic criminologist, as she tries to solve high-profile murders and mysteries. I have an extremely complex relationship to this series because I equally loved and hated this book and this series for entirely different reasons. It's really excellent in some ways, like top-notch research and atmosphere, and really cringy in other ways. And unfortunately, the writing of the protagonist was one of those ways. See, Audrey is your classic poster girl for I'm not like other girls. Audrey is super feminine and loves wearing dresses. The colors, fabrics, stitchings, and hemlines of which she'll tell you every single time she gets dressed. But, like, she also likes forensics and criminology, so she's not like other girls. According to Audrey, other girls like bonbons and flirting, but Audrey likes scalpels and blood. She's so not like other girls. Other girls want to go to finishing school and get a husband, but Audrey wants to go to the Academy of Forensic Medicine and Science because she's not like other girls. So there's a few things here. First of all, the author super bashes you on the head with the idea that having a man's job, which in the time setting of Victorian London would be any job at all, doesn't mean that she can't be feminine, or in her case, pretty. So, bit of a dead horse, but perhaps well-intentioned, so fine. But this idea of a womanly woman in a man's world is seen as so exceptional that it's fetishized, as depicted as her own lens of herself as somehow above other women, and by having literally zero female friendships in the entire book. But for all the bolstering and all the puffing and all the saying, no man's gonna hold me back or whatever, she does. She lets her father dictate where she goes, what she does, who she sees, what she wears, and when. She lets her brother tell her who she can see, how long, and when she has to come home. She allows herself to be chaperoned with her love interest on almost all occasions, as is proper for the reputation of her decency. And at the climax of the book, she is rewarded with an education from her father, who has spent the entire book trying to get her into a more appropriate occupation of her time, like sewing or finding a husband. Now, it has been a few years since I read this book, but overall the score for the protagonist is pretty low. So the last female protagonist that I wanted to look at was Juliet from These Violent Delights, which came out last year in 2020. These Violent Delights is a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in 1920s Shanghai, and as I've mentioned in a few other videos, I love this book. Juliet is a great, strong female protagonist. Not because she's ruthless, which she is, and I love it. Not because she's unabashedly feminine and sexually expressive, which she is, and I love it. Not because she's brave and bold and wouldn't even consider a self-sacrificial move or action, but because she is complex. Her entire character acknowledges the difficulty in choosing how to present. knowing that when she chooses to present as more westernized, she's seen as more powerful, even in her own gang. But when she chooses to present as more traditional, in her traditional Asian garb, she is at best ignored and at worst mistreated. She acknowledges the difficulty with being sexualized when she isn't being sexual. And what's more, she carries all of this around with the weight of her decisions, strategy, and generally ruthless and unaffected demeanor. There are multiple female relationships in this book, all of which are complex. And there are strong themes, not only of boldness, but of leadership, and the complexities of leadership as a woman, and the incredible tightrope that Juliet must walk to maintain a hold on her family's respect. So yes, great book, but even greater female protagonist. So this wasn't really intended to be a comprehensive list or even something that ended in a definitive statement. Books are way too complicated and complex to boil down to a thumbs up or thumbs down based on the personality of a main character. That said, I hope that this gets you thinking about some of the ways that female protagonists are often depicted, so that way you can consider them while you read or write. Things like hypermasculinity or a denial of femininity, or on the other end, a fetishization of femininity. Self-denial or self-sacrifice as a plot point, or worse, a climax. I'm not like other girls syndrome. Sexual expression, women as leaders, and strong and healthy female friendships. There are a whole host of things to consider when reading and writing female protagonists. The most important thing is that women are written as real characters, not caricatures or fantasies. So what do you think? Who are some of your favorite female protagonists? Or least favorite? Have you read any of the books that I did? And do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Either way, let me know in the comments below because I would really love to hear from you. And tell me how you feel. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you loved it, hit subscribe. And don't forget to ring the bell because I'll be bringing you bookish and witchy content every week. In the meantime, happy reading.